Hey, in anime here, and Deku is a bad character. Yeah, didn't hold back with that one. Full disclosure, I am a fan of both the manga and anime of My Hero Academia, but the more I've read and watched, and I'm caught up in both the chapters and episodes, I'm realizing that Deku is a badly written character. So pull up a chair and let's discuss. And FYI, there may be a couple spoilers if you're not caught up in the anime, but other than that, I think we're good. So, roll that intro. Damn it, still no intro. But anyway, let's have a discussion. Deku, or Izuku Midoriya, is the main protagonist of the hit series My Hero Academia. The show is full of a lot of great characters, and as is shown in anime and manga, the main character is supposed to stand out above the rest, but Deku doesn't. Deku has a number of problems that make him not only a pretty basic and uninspired character, but a pretty bad character. To begin with, Deku has a very weak backstory. Good characters, especially protagonists, have a compelling backstory. I don't really want to get into comparison wars between lead shonen characters, but I think it helps my case. Let's look at Naruto for a brief moment. Naruto is a character we get behind and root for because of his backstory. He is orphaned, he's an outcast, and people straight up hate him. His goal is to become the Hokage of his village. Not so much so people like him, but because he just wants to be acknowledged as a person. And throughout the series, gradually gets closer and closer to that goal through trials and tribulations, and we root for him along the way. Deku really doesn't have a compelling backstory. He was born without a quirk. That's about as compelling as it gets. He is the son of a loving mother who takes care of him and supports him. He's very intelligent, and even as one of the quirkless, he's still part of society. We can look at Bakugo, and Bakugo constantly bullies Deku their whole young life for being quirkless, but they still hang out with each other. Naruto was completely outcasted to the point that he was living alone and having to take care of himself. Having a weak backstory leads to my next point of no good character development due to a lack of true motivation. I mentioned why Naruto wanted to become Hokage, but what's Deku's motivation for becoming a hero? He really doesn't have one other than being an admirer of All Might. That's a bad character. He wants to be a hero, and heroes by definition are admired for their brave deeds and noble qualities. Noble qualities. There is no noble quality about Deku being a hero if he's only doing it because he admires, and not even admires, he's obsessed with All Might. Now there are times when he displays quote-unquote noble qualities in the series. One example that I like, mainly because the fight looked cool, was when he was protecting Kota from Muscular. But it really wasn't noble at all. In fact, it has been argued, and I agree, that Deku definitely suffers from both an imposter syndrome and a hero complex. Let's talk imposter syndrome first. Imposter syndrome is basically when an individual doubts their skills, their talents, or accomplishments, and it leads to a feeling of fear of being exposed as a fraud. Now, a fraud in this sense doesn't mean that Deku is trying to deceive anyone per se, but we definitely see his self-doubt a lot in the series. And the fraud relating to him would be that he feels he doesn't deserve One For All. There's a point in the series when he even wants to offer Muriel One For All, because he didn't really save anyone with it, and he felt things would be better if Muriel had it. No! As a great protagonist, you do realize your faults, but then you immediately resolve yourself to do better, whether it's through training, consulting your mentor, and then evolving. But Deku wants to take the easy way out. Now, this whole exchange of giving up / offering Muriel One For All is actually much more complex and gets deeper into why Deku is just so bad as a character, but I will expand on that in a later video. For now, let's get into his hero complex. A hero complex is when someone strives to be a hero of the situation, no matter the situation or the odds. They want to be the one to save the day. This is a major fault of Deku that we are introduced to in the very beginning of the series. Recall when Bakugo is captured by the sludge monster. Deku is witnessing this and is fully aware of his surroundings. There is obvious danger right in front of him, there are innocent civilians watching along with him, and there are pro-heroes doing their job assessing the situation and figuring out what to do next. All this in mind, what does Deku do? He rushes in to save the day. You might want to try and argue that this is an example of heroism, but it's not. Remember the definition. No matter the odds, they want to save the day. Deku has no quirk at this point. Not only that, he lacks any qualities that would have made him any sort of asset and actually becomes a liability to the pro hunters. Hunters? I meant heroes. Ugh, hunter, hunter. This is just one example. As a fan of the series, time and time again, we witness him put himself in harm's way, literally destroying his body to save the day when a number of alternative options are available that would have produced better outcomes. Now, all this leads to my main gripe with Deku, or I guess technically Hirokoshi because he's the author, and that is the what could have been. Again, this leads back to character development, but look at the scenario. From the onset, Deku is subject to a pity factor. A good character is put through some kind of trauma, in his case it would be the bullying, and it affects them, and they have to find a way to overcome and endure it. But Deku was born quirkless, and in a world where a quirk is the norm, he is essentially abnormal, or to put it even more blunt, he's a freak. We, as the viewer and the reader, are meant to feel sorry for him for having to endure this. Deku is a bad character because what does he really endure? If we were able to see how Deku maneuvers through a quirk-filled world without having one, and seeing how he survives and handles obstacles, then we could see how tough life is for him and admire him for how he gets through it. Instead, he is gifted a quirk from his hero, and not just any quirk, arguably the most powerful quirk around. This is where the best opportunity for development is just thrown away. Deku would have been a great character if he went through the series having to train and overcome obstacles as a quirkless person, and then either becoming a great hero despite not having quirks, say like a Batman not having powers in the DC universe, or ultimately earning the One For All quirk toward the end of the series because he proved himself worthy of it. Now, there can't be an argument that he couldn't survive as a quirkless hero, because look at characters like Aizawa and Ojiro, who Eraserhead and Tailman respectively. Eraserhead has a very powerful quirk, but as noted by Deku nonetheless, his quirk does not work on everyone, and he gets around that by being extremely agile and using his cloth bands to bind enemies. Tailman is essentially quirkless. Take away his tail, and he's a very talented team martial artist. Deku can become either of these characters by setting his mind to training and learning and using his intelligence to outsmart enemies and develop weapons to cater to what he needs. He ultimately does start training, but that is because he feels he needs to once he got the One For All. He never felt any drive to train or try to become a hero until he was given the quirk. This ultimately leads to failed character development, because every time there's a threat or a problem, it goes like this. He activates One For All, he gets injured, he is healed, he is told if he does it again, he may never be able to recover, and then he just repeats. He is enabled by some very strong impenetrable plot armor. So, let me reiterate. Deku is a bad character, and I'm finding he is getting more boring as the series goes on, but that will lead into a whole other rant for the future. So please, let me know how you feel about Deku and my arguments. Make yourself known in the comments below. See ya!